A classified US military intelligence report claims China is rapidly building up its commercial ferry fleet in preparation for a possible invasion of Taiwan. For more on this, we're joined by expert associate at the Australian National University's Security College, Jennifer Parker. Jennifer, good to have us here on our program. Tell us, what do we know about the vessels and reports that China is boosting its ferry fleet?
Yeah, look, thanks so much for having me on. So we've seen this reporting predominantly from the ABC today, saying that there has been a classified intelligence report that they've seen saying that China is building these what we call ro-ros, or roll-on, roll-off, roll-off, or ferries to logistically support any kind of amphibious invasion of Taiwan. Now, it says that China is intending on building 70 by 2026. Now, those numbers are new, but the idea of China using civilian ferries or roll-on, roll-off vessels to support amphibious operations has been known for a little while. So in exercises around Taiwan and around China in 2020 and 2021, we saw China test out these concepts. What would these vessels be used for? So effectively, after any initial invasion of Taiwan with military vessels, so Navy amphibious vessels and aircraft, you would then see these ferries and civilian vessels follow up to keep the logistics going to support forces ashore.
Well, tell us what you think about the sources of information or intelligence used to confirm the presence of this growing fleet.
Yeah, look, so, surprising to hear that a defence intelligence report has been seen, but often these ro-ro vessels, these civilian vessels that China is using to practice training and support any potential amphibious invasion, are actually detected and tracked through satellite imagery. So there's a lot of people online who watch very closely China's shipyards. China has over 300 shipyards. In fact, China produces over 1,000 civilian vessels a year, the biggest ship producer in the world. So they track closely the development of these vessels. And as I mentioned before, the estimates from this intelligence reporting reported by the ABC is that China is hoping to have 70 by 2026. Now, this concept, though, as I mentioned, is not new for China. It's actually something that many countries, including Australia, have done before. So navies often use civilian vessels called stuffed, or ships taken up from trade, stuffed being the acronym, to support this logistics. And in fact, Australia used this on a completely different scale, but Australia actually used this concept during East Timor and its support there.
Well, Taiwan says it views the vessels as part of Beijing's expansionist intentions. How significant is this for Taipei?
Yeah, look, and I think that that is a very fair assessment. When you look at the rapid build-up of China's naval amphibious capability, and then the what so-called bridge barges, so barges they've developed to operate far from the coast and put a bridge onto the beach, and then these roll-on vessels and ferries, is clearly designed around preparations for a Taiwan invasion. Taiwan has some very unique beaches. They are very shallow, that many of them rocky. They are quite difficult for an amphibious assault. So clearly China is preparing for this. Does that mean China intends to invade Taiwan? No, not necessarily, but it does mean that they are ensuring they have the capabilities to do so if they wish to. And that's the signal we should take away from this reporting today.
There are also reports that Russia has agreed to help China equip and train an airborne battalion. That's according to a British think tank. What more do we know about that?
Yeah, look, this is quite significant. Now, Russia has been selling equipment to China for a very long time, for decades. But the interesting thing here is the point you mentioned, the airborne battalion. Now, Russia has a lot of experience in this, so moving troops around the field using predominantly helicopters. Certainly, they've had a lot of lessons learned from their illegal invasion of Ukraine. In the event of an amphibious assault, what you would try and do, or an amphibious assault on Taiwan, is you try and use an airborne battalion to secure the airports, so you could generate an air bridge to get more troops in through the airport whilst you're landing on the beaches. So this is another skill set that China is seeking to develop, and certainly it is preparations for an amphibious assault on Taiwan. That doesn't mean China intends to do it, but it certainly matches with the information we've heard about the ferries today as well.
Well, military cooperation between the two nations, as we know, has been deepening. What other deals have they made? Can you tell us, and how significant are they, and are they set to continue growing?
Yeah, it has been rapidly deepening. And remember that actually China and Russia have a history of not trusting each other. They have some border disputes that are not settled. But we saw just before, in fact, a couple of weeks before Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin announced this no limits partnership. Since then, we know that economically, at least, China has been supporting Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. But from a military perspective, too, they've ramped up their coordinated drills. So in the vicinity of Japan, we've seen bomber deployments between Russia and China. We've seen naval patrols. Russia recently reported, although I'm a little skeptical of the truth of this, but Russia recently reported that they'd done a joint submarine patrol around Japan with China. So they are very clearly becoming closer and learning to operate their military capability together, really underpinning that no limits partnership.
And just finally, what does this all say about China's preparedness for conflict? You're saying that it is really getting quite ready.
Look, it is. So China has had a military modernisation plan outlined for about the last decade. Around 2020, it put a little extra step in that, which was a date of 2027, which is the 100th anniversary of the People's Liberation Army. It said by 2027 that the People's Liberation Army and Navy and Air Force needed to be ready to undertake an invasion of Taiwan if directed. Now, some commentators have interpreted that as they intend to invade Taiwan in 2027. I think that is the wrong reading. But certainly China will have the capability to do so. And as we look around the world and we see states increasingly using force to settle their problems, I do think it is increasingly likely. And that's backed up by these large joint exercises we're seeing China conduct around Taiwan twice a year now, and a bunch of other preparations that they seem to be undertaking in space and in the cyber domains.
Jennifer Parker, really good to get your views. Thank you.
Thanks so much.